Welcome to Go Live with Morah Bahtshevah, where my mission is building bridges, connecting our communities, promoting Hebrew businesses and initiatives, one Thursday night at a time, by shining a light on our community. Building bridges, your hub to connect and grow. Strength and unity, highlighting groups that affect change in our communities. Mark your calendar for engaging events in our communities. Supporting our own. Discover Hebrew businesses. A platform to showcase your talent. Shining a light on YouTube channels that align with our values. Nurturing our souls through our congregational families, where ancient meets modern. Books by Hebrew authors. More than a product. Highlighting brands that matter to our community. On Thursdays at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. To feature your brand, channel, group, congregation, business, talent, book, or event, contact me at 12tribestrong@gmail.com.
Shalom, 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 Miss Parker. Peace and blessings, Call Yisrael. How are you guys doing? Welcome back to Go Live with Morah Bahtshevah. And I am Morah Bahtshevah. And I am truly honored and humbled to gather with you once again each week on Thursdays at 9 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time with a heart for our community and a desire to see us thrive. I've created this space, Go Live with Morah Bahtshevah, as a platform for us to uplift and support one another, our talents, our business initiatives, our books, our events, our community groups, our platforms, and our congregations. Inspired by the spirit of unity found in Proverbs chapter 3, verses 27 and 28, which reads, "Do not withhold good from those who need it when you have the ability to help. Do not say to your neighbor, 'Go, return tomorrow, and I will give it,' when you have it with you at that time." Israel, you have it at that time, but you decide to be stingy and withhold good. And don't think the Creator's not going to withhold good from you as well. So don't say to your neighbor, "Go, come back tomorrow," and then tomorrow you'll have another excuse when you have it with you at that time. I believe by coming together, we can strengthen the bonds within our community as well as our nation and help each other flourish. In a world that often pulls us in countless directions, a world that can sometimes feel fragmented and overwhelming, our tradition, the Hebrew culture, teaches us the profound beauty and strength found in unity. Just as the threads of a fabric weave together to create something beautiful and resilient, so too do we as Hebrew brothers and sisters. When we support one another, we are strengthened when we connect, support, and uplift one another. It is with this spirit, this deep-seated belief in the power of community and the power of unity that Go Live with Morah Bahtshevah was born. This is more than just a live stream. It's a virtual gathering place, a digital mishkan, a sanctuary where the vibrant customs and traditions of our community comes alive. Here, we open our virtual doors to the incredible individuals within our fellowship, the passionate entrepreneurs pouring their hearts into their businesses, the dedicated organizers, bringing meaningful events to fruition, the steadfast leaders, nurturing our community groups and congregations, the brilliant authors, crafting stories that illuminate our shared Hebrew experience and history, and talented artists enriching our lives with beauty and perspective. This is their platform, a space to share their endeavors, their visions, and their contributions with you, our cherished audience. Each week, I have the distinct privilege and pleasure of hosting remarkable individuals and authors, empowering brands and impactful companies, offering them a platform and a microphone and a listening ear so that we all may learn about them and support the wonderful things happening within our midst. From innovative businesses rooted in values to inspiring events that nourish our souls, from vital community initiatives that strengthen our bonds to the spiritual homes offered by our congregations. We will explore the richness and diversity of our shared heritage in action. So, whether you are a familiar face, joining us from week to week, or this is your first time tuning in, shalom and welcome to the show. Please know that you are embraced and welcome. Take a deep breath, settle in, and open your heart to the connections that await you tonight and every Thursday night at 9 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time. Let us come together, support one another, and shine a collective light on the good works being done by our Hebrew brothers and sisters and or by brands that empower our communities. Let the sharing, their encouragement, and the building of bridges begin. Again, welcome to Go Live with Morah Bahtshevah. I am so glad you are here, and I am so thrilled to be with you today. I have a truly special segment planned that I know will resonate deeply with so many of you. But in my upcoming Building a Nation from Egypt to Wilderness series starting next week on the 4th of July, we will explore the incredible journey of ancient Israel. But tonight, we are bringing that wisdom right into our modern lives by celebrating the powerful voice of this Hebrew author named Moreh Yeshiah. And we are uncovering, teaching, and affirming our profound historical and spiritual connections to the ancient Hebrews in the Holy Scriptures. Because the title of this segment is From Assyria to America. The Hebrew tribes are in derision. And it's a book based on identity, heritage, and culture for episode 7. Again, the name of this segment is, I'm going to put it on the screen for you guys. From Assyria to America, the Hebrew tribes are in derision by Moreh Yeshiah. And over the last several weeks, I've been talking about authors. These authors are not just writing books, they are building bridges to truth, fostering a deeper sense of identity, and empowering us with knowledge that is vital for our collective nation building. They are providing critical insights into our heritage, challenging narratives, and guiding us toward a richer understanding of who we are in the Most High Yah. So if you are ready to expand your mind, enrich your spirit, and dive into some truly impactful literature, get ready. We're about to highlight this must-read book and introduce you to the brilliant author behind it. So make sure you drop your own favorite Hebrew authors in the chat or comment section down below the video. Let's build this knowledge together. These lists of Hebrew authors and books that I have talked about over the past several weeks, they are part of the Great Awakening. They're awakening us to who we are. It's long past time of forgotten heritage, unknown identity, lost history, fractured spirituality, and diminished culture. These authors have broken down barriers, torn down walls, and did diligent research to bring you these truths, Israel. It's time to shed the light off this gross darkness that we are under. It's time to open our eyes and our mind and turn back to the Most High Yah. So let's welcome Moreh Yeshiah. Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, shalom.
How are you, Moreh?
I'm well. How is everybody?
I am well also. Thank you for joining me tonight and welcome to Go Live with Morah Bahtshevah. Tell the audience a little about yourself, your social media handles, your history in this way of life, whatever you want to share. Before we get into this topic of from Assyria to America, the Hebrew tribes are in derision.
First and foremost, giving honor and praise unto the Most High, the one who sees all and is not seen, the one who judges all and is not judged, the Most High, the creator of heaven and earth. When we're speaking of one in that manner, you don't see your creator as just as much as, let's say you draw something, your drawing doesn't see you. So just as much as the potter and the clay, the Most High is the potter, we're the clay. So whatever you take the clay and make it out to be, the clay does not see you. Just the same, we don't see our God. And that's something that we care to point out in that regard. So the Most High shows his ways of being seen through actions. Now, when we read, for instance, in the book of Genesis, in the beginning, God created heavens and the earth. Bereshit bara Elohim eha shemayim ve'et ha'aretz. That is for us to look up and see the earth we live on, where Gamet Hayam Takat Haaretz, and the sea beneath, or Hamayim Takat Haaretz, or as to say, the waters beneath the earth, as it says in Exodus. So, point in that particular statement right there is to show about the magnificence of the Most High. And in that, there is no room for doubt about our Elohim. There is no room for doubt about our Creator, the one who made us and made us to be perfect. Perfect doesn't mean you don't make a mistake. When I do little children's Hebrew classes or so forth and so on, I tell them, don't erase your mistake. Leave your mistake on the paper so that way you can see the progress as time goes on. So is it the same, say, I believe with us, say, as adults? Now, at the age of now being 45, thankful to the Creator for that, I began to be in the understanding of Israel before I knew who I was as a person. I was 2 years old. I was a baby. And my mother, may she rest in peace, brought me out to a congregation called Kol She'erit, which is in the Bronx. Had my first Hebrew lesson there when I was 4 years old. By the time I was 10 years old, I was a member, for what it's worth being a child, as a member in a congregation called called Beni Adat. The leader at the place Kol She'erit from 1982, and even before that, before I got there, was a man and his assistant named Moreh Yeshiah and Adon Yishai. May they both rest in peace. When in 1990, I went to a congregation called Beni Adat in Brooklyn, the head of the place there was a person named Rabbi Yeshurun. May he rest in peace. Stayed there for about a little over 2 years. And the only reason, and the only reason why we left is because the congregation known as the Shabo is closer to us in distance. So the leader of that place, may he rest in peace, was Cohen Lewi, and his assistants at the time was Kohen Malkiel, may he rest in peace. Kohen Pinkas, may he rest in peace. And Kohen Mikael, may the Most High continue to bless his life. One of my main Hebrew teachers. So that is the groundwork and the essential of how I came into the understanding of Israel from, say, age 2 until Hashaba, that was in New York, closed in 1995. Many going to another state in that particular case at the age of 15. So that's how that was in that particular case. The matter of writing books, I thought was a good idea. I started when I was, say, 18, 19 years old, just writing, and then eventually moving from pamphlets into an actual book format itself, as you see online and advertised. As you see, my number 908-587-4841. That's the best way to reach me. You can do it through text, WhatsApp, and my email I'll put in here. I don't know why this thing doesn't work when I try to do it this way. But anyway, my email is yyisrael22, the number 22 at yahoo.com. Okay.
Okay, I put it in the chat for you.
Okay, thanks.
That's all. You ready?
Okay, yes.
So I know a few weeks ago when you were here, we talked about the name Israel and how people say that it's derived from several different deities. So I want you to briefly explain that again. And once you explain that, I want you to tell us, since you are a Hebrew teacher, let me explain about Moreh Yeshiah. He is a historian, he is an author, he is a fabulous Hebrew teacher. So if you want to know Hebrew, you need to look him up. He knows the correct spelling. So with that said, it's a lot of people around here spelling Yisrael any and every kind of way. And as I just said, I want you to briefly talk about the name Israel and is it derived from several different deities. And then I want you to follow up that discussion with the correct way to spell Israel in Hebrew. I've seen it spelled Yisrael, Yishalala, and Yisrael, and Israel, etc.
Okay, let me say this in due respect. The name Israel, as well as the tribes of Israel, was essentially named after things and events that had happened. That is the thing, to let that be known first. Also, when a people have been asleep, have been cut off from their land, cut off from their culture, cut off from their language, when one begins to wake back up, we might see things that are said differently. We want to emphasize that is not done intentionally in many cases. We would hope and pray that that's not the case with that. When we say the name Yisrael, what you're saying is two different Hebrew words, Yisra and El. So let's deal with the first part, if we will. Yisrael, that Y sound and say the beginning of it, denotes the third person masculine. He, whatever. So then you're left with the S and the R sound. That comes from the root word sarah in Hebrew, which means to contend or to prevail. So now, with that being the case, that Y sound shows it to be a prefix. So Yisra means he will contend, he will prevail. Who is he? El. El in Hebrew is understood as mighty one, said in English in many cases as God. So when we say Yisrael, what we're saying is that God or the mighty one will prevail, El or the mighty one will contend. Now, when people who may not understand that you can have the word bar in Aramaic, which means son, S-O-N, and then you have bar in Hebrew, which means clean or pure, same pronunciation, sometimes even the same spelling, but the meaning between different languages is not the same. That is a matter of respecting one's particular language. We must have that understanding. When you're saying, speaking in general, that Yisrael comes from Isis, Ra, and El, is emphatically incorrect. Isis is not even part of the Egyptians' gods or goddesses. That is a Greek transliteration of one of the Egyptian gods or goddesses. So that is something to point out in that case. El is not even part of the Egyptians' understanding because there was no El inside of the Egyptian language. Till you get into maybe say the Ptolemy matter. That is why when you read about Namer of Egyptian all the way down to Dynasty 31, you don't really see no L in any of their kings, in any of their princes, in any of their magistrates. You understand? When you read about Ayujalon in the scriptures, the Egyptian writing is Iwer because the Egyptian R is in place of the L of other languages. This is referred to in linguistics as metathesis. You see this too in the scriptures. All right. So these are things that we want to point out regarding that particular matter. So Yisrael, as said by those, and I mean no disrespect, who did not take out the time to sit there and understand linguistics matters, saying is Isis Ron L, does not show it to be so. L in Hebrew comes before the understanding of there even being one Ham or Ham in the scriptures. Some people state that the L in that comes from the Canaanite matter, but such is not the case. Mahalalel, which is older than the matter of Ham, older than the matter of Noah, Mahalalel is Mahalel in Hebrew, which means praising El. So the understanding of saying El as the mighty one predates the matter of Hamites even coming into a kingdom or an empire or a peoples in that manner. So hopefully that's understood, and you can go to Genesis chapter 5 in that manner. So no, let us not think that Israel comes from that particular matter and so forth and so on. But again, when you have a people that have been asleep, and we talk about this, say from the book From Assyria to America, when you get into, we're going to talk about Tiglath-Pileser all the way to George Washington, over 2,000 say of years, when a people come back to awakening, they may say certain things that don't coincide at first as time begin to process and progress on. We hope and pray that is not a deliberate thing. If you say Yashra Allah, I'm going to say Yashra Al just to be contradictory without realizing Reuben all the way, or Reuben all the way down to Benjamin, each of the tribes of Israel was named after a particular thing. So let's understand why, for instance, Naphtali was named such. And then you can understand the root of the word Naphtal, meaning contention, and Naphtali, meaning my contention, the E at the end of Naphtali, showing first person possession. So hopefully that's understood.
Okay, next question. Since you brought up your book, what exactly does From Assyria to America refer to in your research?
Okay, Assyria was a kingdom that came up greatly in history. They had wars with Babylon in the past and defeated them. What the purpose in that book is to help shed light upon the matter. When you read about the Assyrian kings, we're going to talk about briefly, is Tiglath-Pileser, Shalmaneser, Sargon, Sennacherib, Esarhaddon, that ruled from the timing of the 8th century all the way into, say, the 6th century BCE, all spoke about the Israelites. Whether it was the northern kingdom Israelites or the southern kingdom Israelites of the tribe of Judah who were rulers, the Assyrian king spoke of them. The biblical record and the Assyrian record coincide. So that will lead us to understand, I'm trying to sit there and stay focused with the mic, that will lead us to know and understand that if the biblical record from the Israelites and the Assyrian record that you see in museums today coincide with each other, such as the teleprism that you see over inside of one of the museums in Europe of today, the Assyrian king Sennacherib, mentioned in the book of 2 Kings 18, his record corresponds to the biblical record, where sadly the Israelites were not the prevailers. So now when you go from, say, from Assyria, then you come to Babylon. Then you have from Babylon, when they destroyed the temple that Solomon had built in the year 587 BCE or 586 BCE, taking people of the tribe of Judah or the southern kingdom of Judah that fell to Babylon into the Babylonian captivity. What happened to the Israelites that was in the northern kingdom of Israel, that was in Assyria? After Assyria lost to Babylon, many of them, according to the book of Jeremiah, migrated to other parts of the world. Some of them were taken into the Babylonian captivity, as Jeremiah chapter 50 points out. So now you have from Assyria, then now we got Babylon. Babylonian record mentions the Judah king or the Judite king, Jehoiakim, mentioned in the book of 2 Kings chapter 24. After that particular matter, you had it to where the Babylonians were defeated by the Medes and the Persians. The Medes and the Persians speak about the Judite people under the Morashu matter who were going around in Persia as merchants. Now, after you had now Assyria lost to Babylon, Babylon lost to Persia, now you have Cyrus, and then you have also Cambyses and Darius and so forth and so on. Now you get to the timing of the biblical line of Haggai, Zechariah, a little after Daniel, Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther, and things of that particular timeline in that manner. The prophets of Israel has ceased, certainly by the later part of the Persian Empire. Then you had scribes, then you had authors. And so we want to emphasize the matter of authorship in the house of Israel is not new. Now, after Persia as a kingdom lost to Alexander, son of Philip of Macedon, in the battle of Gargamella in 331 BCE, all right, you had the Ipsus battle in 333, then the Gargamella battle in 331. You had where the Persians lost to the people of the Greeks, all right, namely from Macedon. Now, during the timing of the Greek Empire, you can cite people such as Josephus that gets into the matter of when Alexander came to Jerusalem. You had it to where the Israelites were saying he was prophesied according to the Israelite prophet Daniel to have defeated Persia. After Alexander died in 323 BCE, now you get to the two important peoples of the Israelites as a kingdom, one being the Seleucids, the other being the Ptolemies. In the year time frame 201 to 198 BCE, you had the Panian battle. That was between the Seleucids and the Ptolemies. Seleucus III and Ptolemy V. When the Ptolemies lost to the Seleucids, in that case, the people of the Seleucids had control over Palestine, which is the land of Israel, where the Israelites were. Now, as time goes on, you get to where we get in the Apocrypha in the timing of the Maccabees. Then you read about Judas Maccabeus and his brothers, Simon, Jonathan, Jehoiakim, and others. You understand? After the timing of the Maccabees, we want to emphasize about Judas Maccabeus, that is to say his nephew by the name of John Hyrcanus. John Hyrcanus, he did a thing that was unprecedented, maybe not even bad, by teaching the Idumean people or the Edomites, that is to say the culture of the Israelites. Now, remember that as we go along with these kingdoms, please. Now you had it to where it went from Maccabean matter to Hasmonean matter. After the timing of the Maccabees, you had the Hasmoneans. Now you get into Aristobulus, then you get to people buying into the priesthood and things of that kind of nature. Rome is coming up. Herod already understanding the ways of Israel, the son of Antipater. Now you see how that cohesiveness came into play. Let's remember, John Hyrcanus taught, he being an Israelite, the Idumean people the ways of the children of Israel. The Edomites, namely in this case called the Idumeans, were friends since the time of Julius Caesar of Rome, who was part and partial friends, part and partial enemies with Pompey. The Roman historian Tacitus speaks about the matter of Pompey going into the temple in 63 BCE. Pompey of Rome was defeated, brothers and sisters, by Ptolemy XIII, who was ruling in Egypt. Julius Caesar, he eventually lost. You know, Brutus and them sat there and put him to death. And then you get into the timing of whom we call Augustus. Augustus and Herod were two different people, though friends. Augustus was from the line of Japhet through Rome, and Herod was an Edomite. Let's understand and remember that particular case. Prior to the timing of Augustus having power, we remember Mark Antony and Cleopatra, one being defeated and then he committed suicide. So what's going on now is you had the Edomites already having some kind of clout with the matter of Julius Caesar, and then the matter later on with the matter with Augustus. The Israelites were the third world in their day as Rome came up into power. The Ptolemies eventually fell in Egypt. Rome came into power. Now, what happened we're talking about with Rome when we talk about a matter, say, from Assyria to America, is this in brief. You had it to where the Roman leaders, we're going to sit there and skip some of them and go straight into Vespasian. Vespasian was the father of Titus and Domitian. Domitian, some people say that he assassinated his brother Titus, but some say yay, some say nay. The point in mentioning the matter with Vespasian is he sent his son Titus to try to quell the spirit of Israel. The battle that we read about in what happened between 66 AD and 73, which led into the battle of Masada, AD or CE and so on, right? 70 AD is when the temple was destroyed. But the battle that the timing of the temple being destroyed, the Israelites were still fighting, even though the temple was destroyed. Now, after you had the situation with Titus, you had Domitian. And Domitian made what they call the Archer Titus, where he took, according to Josephus, Israelites that were in Egypt and took them to Rome for a matter of saying a tribute. Oh, look, we got the people of Judah over here. What wound up happening is people of the Israelites, namely of the what would have been the southern kingdom, the tribe of Judah, and so on, they wound up proselytizing in Rome. That's to say, making converts, like you had John Hale Kenneth before doing with the Edomites. You had Israelites of Judah while a captive in Rome teaching the Romans about the ways of Israel. How does this lead to Constantine is very important into history once we get down into it. Because now you had Roman paganism mixed in with the teachings of the Israelites. Thus, you get a branch called Christianity. This is why in Christianity, they talk about the tribe of Judah conquering. This is why in Christianity, they start talking about, they say 144,000 of Israel. This is why in Christianity, though we do not subscribe to, say, the New Testament, when they sit there and talk about the 12 gates and the tribes of Israel, Christians are not a part of it. So now looking, I want to emphasize where we're going and following this timeline: theological, spiritual, and historical. What happened essentially is this: as we go along that particular time frame, that particular timeline, right? Rome of the West, after Maximilian and Diocletian separated in 285 AD, fell in 476 AD, while the Byzantine or the Eastern Roman Empire fell in 1453. When you're doing that time frame like that, Israel, to a great extent, after Titus, you eventually get to Domitian. You eventually going all the way down to people like Trajan, and then eventually you get to Nerva, and then you eventually get, brothers and sisters, to Hadrian. Hadrian made it illegal for Israel, the people, to go back into the land. So where was Israel, the people, to a great extent, that was there from the timing of Persia, if they didn't go into African places? The Kittos battle that was in 115 to 117 between the Israelites and the emperors of Rome was Israelites that was in Libya all the way down into Egypt and into Ethiopia that wanted to go back into the land of Israel but were denied access. So if they were denied access during the Kittos battle, where were the Israelites going if not further into Africa to a great extent? So now when we deal with a subject matter that you see in the background called From Assyria to America, now you begin to sit there and see how Israelites begin to migrate on their own volition and setting up kingdoms in Western Africa, eventually falling to the Moors, eventually falling to the Muslims, eventually falling to the Christians, eventually falling to the Portuguese, and later on the British. Now, that's just a synopsis of how that book gets into that. There's much more details in the book, but just off the top of the head, what the book is about in the synopsis with names, dates, times, and places, that's how that book is formatted.
Okay, thank you for that great answer. And what initially sparked your interest in tracing a lineage or connection from ancient Assyria to America?
I got the concept and understanding of saying from and to unbeknownst to him, maybe, may the Most High bless his life, Rudolph Windsor. He wrote a book called From Babylon to Timbuktu, which I cite quite often and put in my bibliography. Definitely give a citation and reference. Using that as a catalyst from and to is something that I wanted to sit there and help bring forth into fruition by mentioning the kings of Assyria, the kings of Babylon, by mentioning the matter with Persia, the Greeks, later on the Ptolemies and the Seleucids, later on the Romans, later on the people of Ishmael, and how each of them spoke about the Israelites in their encounters. We're talking all the way from the matter of, if we will, brothers and sisters, from Tiglath-Pileser, mentioning about the tribes of Israel, to the Arabian traveler Ibn Battuta, for those familiar with it, in history, speaking about the Israelites being in, quote, Western Africa, and so forth and so on. We're talking about, if we were to cite, brothers and sisters, the matter of John Oldgerby, who in the 17th century spoke about people being on both sides of the river Niger in Western Africa, that spoke about being from the people of Abraham, that's to say the people of Abraham. When you go in your own time into Cambridge history, not Cambridge encyclopedia, but Cambridge history books, it talks about a diaspora of, quote, the Jews. By Jews, we understand the house of Israel. Byword, Deuteronomy 28 is where Israel would be said, you shall be a byword, a sign, and a wonder. So now when we read Jew in history, we have to understand which part is which. Who were the Khazars in the conversion, and who were the people that were called the Judeans in some way between Iuda of Latin or Judea of Latin being transformed through Middle French to the English Jew. The difference between they of the Japhetic Europeans conversion through Ashkenaz and they of the house of Israel through the line of Shem. But that too is spoken upon in that particular case. Now, what I did and tried to do is cite as many sources of rulers, travelers, explorers, citing newspapers, magazine articles, and things that, according to the way I understood it, Psalms 85, when it says the truth shall come from the earth. So citing things such as stelae, a big rock, if you will, with an inscription on it, or a magazine speaking about the house of Israel and its traveling, the primary source being the scriptures, Deuteronomy 4, Deuteronomy chapter 28, Leviticus chapter 26, Jeremiah chapter 5, about the diaspora or the dispersion of Israel and how the references came about in that manner. But the title itself, From Assyria to America, that from and to, I was inspired by reading the book From Babylon to Timbuktu in that manner.
Hallelujah. And that leads us into the next question. Can you outline the key takeaways you present in From Assyria to America Part 1? What are the key historical periods or events you highlight?
All right. In the book From Assyria to America Part 1, the highlights is first talking about Israelites in Egypt. Why do I go there, even though Egyptian civilization, for the lack of a better term and saying civilization, is older than that of Assyria? Is because the Israelites, according to the Israelite story, were slaves in Egypt. So I wanted to show evidence from the Egyptian side of the matter in that particular case. Now, getting into, say, these kingdoms and the highlighting and things of that kind of nature, if we take what it says in Genesis chapter 12, that what? Through Abraham and his seed, all the nations of the earth shall be blessed. And that is, as pointed out before, how each of those kingdoms came to a great extent and how those kingdoms began to format. So that was a particular matter with that. I have to ask and respect. I can be excused for a minute and I'll be right back, please. And I want to say sidebar, I appreciate the timing in the interview, but I'll be right back, family. Thank you for that.
And I will play a video for you guys in the meantime. I am trying to upload it so you can look at some Abraham, some pictures of Moses. Moses that I'm working on for my Torah lesson. So I'm gonna say resuming shortly instead of starting. So let me upload it right quick in the meantime. And for those who just joining me, I will start next week my Torah study and history lesson next week on the 4th of their life. Because I am still working on the workbook. And you will love it. I am loving it. So in the meantime, let me upload this video and let you guys look at some great pictures that I have of Moses, because Moses is the main character in our Torah lesson, Building a Nation from Exodus to Wilderness. And I want you to see how he dealt with these idols. Anybody have any questions so far? I hope you guys are enjoying the lesson. Moreh Yeshiah is talking about from Assyria to America. He's talking about our migration, our exile, really, and how we end up, some from Assyria and from ancient Assyria, and others came from Rome after they conquered us. So let me play this right quick. I'm almost finished. He may be back before I get a chance to play it, but I'm going to play it anyway. I hope I spelled all of it correctly, because I'm trying to get it up right quick. I have this for next week, but I will play it now. Resuming. Okay, that's it. I have it spelled correctly. Let me upload it. Check and see if anybody asking a question in the meantime. Oh, he is back. I didn't even get an opportunity to play the video. You ready to come back on, Moreh?
Okay, yes, I appreciate it. Thank you for that.
Okay. Where he went to? He left. But let me do this video. Oh, you back. Okay, we left off talking about the key takeaways, but now we are talking about part 2 now. For part 2 of the series, what new ground do you cover, or what further evidence and connections do you reveal that build upon the first book?
Okay, the reason why there's a book part 2 is because in publishing, they generally don't have you do over 700 pages. So that's why in part 1 it's over 400, and part 2 is say over before it was expanded over 300. Initially, like, the book was a 5 by 8, and then eventually became into an a 9x6 size book. And as you know, the smaller the book, the more pages. In that particular case, the publishing companies in which I dealt with, they generally don't have books that are like over 700-800 or so pages. So that's why there's a part 2. I want to take out the time, if it can be seen. The cover of the part 1 is in the background, but I'm gonna read the table of contents on part 2. And it says the matter of 1619 in Genesis 15, because some are teaching that Genesis 15 is a culmination in prophecy from 1619, which is not the case. The matter with Egypt, from Assyria to America, part 2. The matter of history and pictures. In that chapter 4, there's over 40 pictures with descriptions of each. The name, that's to say the name of the Most High. Chapter 6, the tribe of Dan, because people saying Dan is destroyed. We wanted to emphasize that is not accurate, as pointed out even on my own platform. Chapter 7, from Angola to Arkansas. Now, let me say that, if I may. In From Assyria to America, part 1, there's a part called From Ghana to Georgia, from Dahomey to Delaware, from Madagascar to Manhattan. So you see the Ghana, Georgia, the G and the G, Dahomey, Delaware, the D and the D. And this one you have from Angola to Arkansas. Arkansas was a slave state. I forgot to put that in part 1 with my notes. So in part 2, I made that part of it. Chapter 8, why is Mizraim not Egypt? Because Mizraim is the name that Israel gave to the same place that later on was called Egypt. But there's a Hebrew meaning for that word. The matter with the Edomites, chapter 9, then you got conclusion and acknowledgments. So from Assyria to America, part 1 doesn't really delve into Esau or Edom in that much. And the matter of Egypt or Mizraim and from Assyria to America, part 2, deals with it from a lot of the Egyptian culture, more so than from part 1, which deals with a lot of Egyptian matter of history. So that's what it was and is in that particular case. So I want to, in this book, if the picture can be seen, but it's there, I gave a shout out to, may she rest in peace, my mother and my father. Both of my parents are deceased. And I pen named author Vincent Hutchinson in honor of my father to give him respect in that particular case. All right, that's not my government name. That is the name that I use in regards as a pen author name and giving honor to, may he rest in peace, my father who passed away when I was 14. So these are things that we care to say, bring out for reference purposes.
Okay, I have a follow-up question. You talked about the Edomites and Edomian. What happened to you?
Now I'm right here. I just put the camera off because I was drinking. I'm right here.
Okay, so doing your research, have you found them to be the white, the white man, the Caucasian?
Esau is a people that when you read in Jeremiah 49 and in Obadiah, it talks about them hiding and stealing. Two things pointed out regarding Esau or Edom. The Idumean people, the people of Edom, were a people who did not want to be known. They didn't want to be the head people seen in all things. Hence, you see them hiding behind the Roman Empire. Hence, you see them hiding behind the matter of what happened with the Israelites and the Romans. In the book of Obadiah, to point out, it says, all the men of your confederacy have conducted you to the border. They that were at peace with thee have laid a snare against thee. So that right there talks about who, that's in Obadiah, about Esau or Edom, if you will. Who were the people that was at peace with Edom? For Obadiah, during the time of the Babylonian Empire, to say, they that were at peace with you have laid a snare against you. Who were the Edomites friends with? Obadiah, speaking about the children of Esau, it says, when neighbors came came, into the land where Judah was and carried off Judah's substance, you should have not done so, O house of Esau. Then when we go into Ezekiel, chapter 35 and chapter 36, it talks about the matter of the people of Esau going into and wanting the land of Israel for themselves and casting the land out as a prey. So now, if we understand the European, that is to say Javan being the Greeks, who will be by default Caucasians. If we understand Taras being a matter of Italians, thus the father of Romans, no, to answer the question directly, Esau is not the father of, for the lack of a better term, the white races or the white nationalities and so on. So that is as far as it goes with that. Now, as far as it goes with Esau himself, or Esau or Edom himself, he does not care to be known. But once we know who's who, we definitely can pinpoint who Esau is not. So we have to look in prophecy in that case. Who wanted the land of Israel? Why was the land of Israel taken up in the lips of talkers, and who is talking about it? That's how you can identify, just as much as Deuteronomy 28, Leviticus 26, in the matter of history with our people. You can identify the house of Israel. Look at the prophecies in the scriptures that speak of Esau and see who follows that pattern. Then we can sit there and see who is who. You cannot look, brothers and sisters, at Esau being hairy and Edom being red, saying, oh, this must be him in that particular case. Because his children was never said to have to be like that. It said Jacob was a quiet man dwelling in tents. Jacob is Israel, but not all Israelites are quiet men dwelling in tents. So Esau being red and hairy doesn't mean that everyone red and hairy is of the house of Esau. So these are things just to point out, if we will, for reference purposes. Sadly, on the other end, because there is a thought of Esau or Edom being by default, quote, the white man, for the lack of a better term, prophecies are not meant to be understood. Let me give an example. You would then have by default saying that the European man is the Edomites coming against the children of Israel that scattered into Africa. But Edom, nowhere in the scriptures was ever spoken upon by default of prophets attacking the Israelites. They were never told like Babylon was told. Like Daniel having a vision about the Greeks coming. Edom was never told in dream, vision, or prophecy about going against the house of Israel. Edom was told after the fact in history of them doing it, which they should have not done. So that is sorry about that. That is something that we care to point out for reference purposes in that particular case.
Thank you for clearing that up, because I never believed they were either. So, going on to the next question. When tracing these historical migrations you mentioned, what types of evidence do you rely on most heavily? Is it linguistic, cultural, genetic, historical documents, or a combination?
All right, Toda. I do not rely heavily on linguistics in making, say, connections in that case. A little here and there regarding linguistics, like the people in Carthage said to be of the tribes of Asher and Zebulun and Issachar. They named their leaders Shopat or Shopate, which means judge in Hebrew as well. The people of Carthage, let's just use that as an example, they came to power as time went on in the 5th and 6th centuries BCE. According to Joseph Williams in his book, Hebrewisms of West Africa, the people of Carthage, and I want to say this if I may, a lot of people who disagree with Israelites and what we say historically and so on, shun that book. Oh, well, that book, whatever. But we as Israelites don't shun by even reading the Nuwabian books that Dr. York wrote. We don't shun reading the books that Yosef ben Yochanan or Dr. Ben wrote. We don't shun the books reading, though he may have not agreed with us as the House of Israel, that John Henry Clark wrote. So we don't want to come off as Israelites as being, say, tunnel vision or closed-minded to references. Be open to such. If you're confident in such, then that should not be a problem. All right. Now, cultural genetic. I don't deal heavily, say, with DNA or the H1B1 that some other brothers and sisters do. So in my references, I do not generally go into a lot of the sciences in that particular case, though I don't shun it. But personally, in my references in my books, no, I do not. As other brothers and sisters whom I do cite do. All right, cultural, yes, because there are certain things that is of the house of Israel that is not, say, of other peoples. When you find, for instance, the cultures of people saying that, just using this as an example, that they have blood eating matters as a part of their culture, that is not part, say, of the culture of the Israelites. You understand? Not saying that Israelites never did eat blood, because you read about it in the book of Samuel, sadly. You understand? But is that part of your culture, or was that, no disrespect intended, cultural diffusion? That's to say, when you mix different cultures together, brothers and sisters, in the outcome of such. All right? Now, I do rely heavily, as pointed out earlier, on historical documents. So I cite people such as John Ojobi. I cite people such as Mungo Park. I cite people such as Nahum Schultz, just to cite, quote unquote, the white references. I cite people such as David Down, David Roll, to cite, quote unquote, the white references. And it's sad to have to say, but I made sure in my book, being a black man, being a man of color, and showing my picture and so forth and so on, which I'm not always too keen to. But anyway, I did that so that way people will sit there and not think that one is being biased. It's sad in the world that we have to sit there and go that route in order to sit there and reach certain audiences, but so be it. Now, I want to say, if I'm not diverting from the question, is this: giving honor to the Most High. I attempted to go on other people's platforms and push and promote this literature, and found out, when I did a little bit more investigation, what they were promoting, sidebar, then known up front, was lasciviousness, ridiculousness, and wickedness. And two matters with that was, well, your book this, and you have a different version of your book, and so therefore it may not be suited for the channel. And I was like, oh, okay, but come to find out, when a brother wrote this, as pointed out on my platform, it wasn't about an angel coming to me, a dream or a vision or a prophet. It was a free will matter from the heart to the Most High. So I say that not to try to sound philosophical, but when one door may close or is not open, and you doing something regarding the Creator may not want that on every particular platform and channel. Every view on YouTube is not good. Every dollar that you may get is not good. So these are things that we want to point out were first purposes, given the respect, being contacted by Morah Bahtshevah in order to have a platform in order to release this kind of literature and everything, because everybody is not okay with promoting somebody else.
Hallelujah. Yes, this platform is for our Hebrew brothers and sisters, and you all are welcome. If you know anyone that wants to appear on Go Live with Morah Bahtshevah, send me an email at 12tribestrong@gmail.com. And moving on, we're going to talk about research and analysis when it came to this book. The term Assyria holds significant weight in biblical history. How does your research on Assyria connect with or shed new light on the history of the Hebrews or the Israelites, or as we are commonly called?
All righty. Assyria is mentioned a good 10 or more times in the scriptures, and that is not by accident. When you look, for instance, at the pictures in the statues, if you will, and walls, such as they are Sargon, you see what we call today of braids or plaits, and say ones here. Why does that become of significance? Because the Assyrians were from the were from the Shemitic people. There is a king of Assyria named, for instance, Shalmaneser the Third, who mentions Ahab, king of Israel, in his records in the battle of Karkar, which is before the timing of Tiglath-Pileser. So now, in regards with your question, how does one's research on Assyria connect or shed light or new light on the history of the Israelites? Is because there's a battle, for instance, in 853 BCE, the Karkar, K-A-R-K-A-R, or Q-A-R-Q-A-R battle that the Bible itself does not speak upon. But yet the Assyrian record from Shalmaneser III speaks about the Israelites participating in that battle. Not that we need as Israelites other people to speak about us for references, but if a matter is established by 2 or 3 witnesses, then how can it be wrong to go outside of, and I hate to have to put it in terms like that, of, quote, the biblical text in order to point out a reference in that particular matter? Israel, we had to, for the lack of a better term, step it up as far as your citations and your references. The way that teachings are done in a environment of a camp where everyone has a basic same understanding is not the same way to present it on YouTube, on TikTok, on Facebook Live. You have to come strategically different. And I say that in due respect. You cannot come camp-based with just, please don't take this offensively, just your Bible and Apocrypha. You have to go, as Rudolph Windsor did, as Moses Farrar did, outside of the camp matter of references in order to bring people to an understanding that the camp is trying to bring. If you are comfortable in your research, that does not bother you. It doesn't sit there and make you feel that you are, quote unquote, sacrilegious, even though Israel is not a religion. It doesn't make you feel that, oh, you're going against the grain. It doesn't make you feel like, oh my gosh, how can I do that? And so forth and so on. If anything, it strengthens, quote unquote, your arguments. These are things we want to point out, references. Let me give an example. Daniel, the prophet, cited Jeremiah, the prophet, in Jeremiah chapter 9. Pardon me, in Daniel chapter 9. In Daniel 9, he cited Jeremiah, the prophet. The prophets cited each other. Jeremiah cited Micah, the prophet. Micah, the prophet, was around, say, the time of Isaiah, the prophet, if you will. So now you got Jeremiah citing Micah or Micah, and you got Daniel citing Jeremiah. So that means that people before the book that we see today, the scriptures, the Tanakh, if we will, the prophets were citing each other about things that were happening. Now, Assyria, Israel, Judah, and Babylon, that gets into a very, very matter historically. And that is what the book talks about, the battle of Carchemish. When you go in 2 Kings 24, the matter with Necho of Dynasty 26 in Egypt and what happened with that. The situation in Thebes in Egypt in 671 BCE and how what was going on in the house of Israel during that time. Very important to know.
Thank you for that great answer to my question. And the next question is, you cover the timing of Hebrews in various captivities: Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Media, Greece, Rome, and the American captivity. And I will be doing a series on that later this year. So, based on your research, could you elaborate on which captivity was or is the longest, most grueling captivity, and how it aligns with the preceding or succeeding historical periods of captivity?
The Assyrians took over where Israel was, in so many words, in 740. This is a time frame round off, 745 or so BCE. Then Assyria fell in 609 or 612 to Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar's father, by the name of Nabopolassar. Babylon comes up as an empire. Babylon as an empire in this case goes from 606 to 538 BCE. Persia comes up as an empire. Judah as a kingdom already fell to Babylon, as pointed out. From 538 to 331, the Persian Empire was there, and Israel was already associated with the Medes and the Persians directly after the fall of Babylon. We read about Cyrus, and this Cyrus we read of in Ezra is Cyrus II. Then he had his successors like Cambyses and Darius. Darius, correct me if I'm wrong, that we read of in Daniel chapter 9 is the same Darius that was ruling in Egypt in Dynasty 27 when Persia ruled in that. Daniel chapter 7 verse 5, when it says the bear that had 3 ribs in the mouth between the teeth of it is Babylon, Lydia, and Egypt that Persia had ruled over. Now, Persia ruled and then fell to the Greeks, as pointed out in 331 BCE. So now the Greek Empire was in its zenith to a great extent after Alexander, say from 331 all the way to 146, when Perseus lost to the Romans. 168, then later on 146, the Persians were defeating the Greeks. Now, Rome as an empire in that particular case, from 146 BCE, all the way until the timing of 285 AD, when Maximilian and Diocletian separated, as pointed out earlier, quote unquote, the Eastern and Roman Empire. The Eastern and Western Roman Empire, sorry. So now, after that, Israel, as we've been pointing out, migrated in many cases to African places. The Kittos battle, you may want to look up to see the location of where the Israelites were fighting to get back into the land of Israel against Hadrian of Rome as time went on in the Bar Kokhba battle, if you will. Now, brothers and sisters, getting back into this here. America had our people as captives before it was called even America. The first matter dating back to the colonial period and before that, in 1565, with the Spaniards in what we call Florida of today. Lucas Vacus alone, before that in 1526, in what we call the area of North and South Carolina of today. So, brothers and sisters, the longest to answer that question would be our captivity here in the Western Hemisphere. if that answers the question. Mississippi was a legal slave state until 2013.
Toda Rabah. I'm surprised Mississippi. I'm surprised. Well, I'm not surprised United States, America is the longest captivity. But which one was the gruelest one? The most hardest and difficult one, could you say?
It would be the one over here in the Western Hemisphere without being graphic. We're talking about women being hung upside down and the babies being cut out. We're talking about men getting their manhood taken off and then shoved inside of him. So I don't want to get too graphic, but as far as it goes with, say, gruesome, yeah, you had, and it's not to make light of it, you had the people of Moab that sat there, sacrificed women of the Israelite nation to their god Chemosh. You understand? And you had to where President Woodrow Wilson was showing Klan movies inside of the White House in the 1940s. President Wilson was showing Birth of a Nation inside the White House promoting the KKK. So if you're asking about which one is more gruesome, in that particular case or hardest, I would lean toward, not trying to be so censored, us here, the black men in America. Sorry, I would say would be, well, I try to turn the camera off from drinking, but would be us say over here inside the Western Hemisphere in that particular case. The matter of separation of family, the matter of flogging or beating somebody if they were reading. Reading was a crime, and I use myself as a reference. When I was stealing as a child, I didn't want my mother to read the receipt. It did not correspond with the change I was given. Now, mind you, I was a child, and I'm not saying that's even right, but that's the time frame. I don't steal anymore. Just as much as I didn't want my mother to see the change that was shortened, along with the receipt, so was it a crime for us to be taught how to read, and for us reading was a crime. So that's something to point out. There are slave testimonials that date back to people who are 80 and 90 something years old in the 1930s, and they're saying they can talk but they cannot read. That's pointed out in the book, Brothers and Sisters, Israelite History as it relates to the world. Black women in the 1930s who were children in the 1800s that were enslaved, that did not know, even at 80, 90 years old, how to read in the 1930s, after the Great Depression. So these are just things to point out in that regard. Oh, sidebar. There are so many references about them coming or their parents coming from Africa. The theory saying we're not from Africa via the slave trade is erroneous. Just say you don't like Africa and you've been in America too long, you refuse to get a passport, you refuse to learn the language, and you're comfortable just speaking English inside the United States.
Thank you for that concise and consistent answer to all of my questions. Next on the list, the description. The book's descriptions mentions the sad plight of the Hebrews from the biblical and historical perspective. You even called it Hebrew tribe. The 12 tribes are in derision. So, what, in your view, are the most significant and often overlooked aspects of this sad plight that you mentioned in your book?
We're talking about people whose tongues were cut out when they was passing on the history of family. We're talking about removing the man from the house in the 60s and 70s. So let's talk about that, for instance. Cutting off. Ezekiel chapter 37 when it speaks of the dry bones. And it says we are clean cut off. Clean cut off from what? Language, culture, land, ethnicity. As many of our people in slavery only knew the plantation, so do many of our people born and only been in America think that this must be our home. Having no way of taking over your home, such is not the case of it being your home. The land of Israel is bigger than what we see on the news, the actual land. And we are landless over here in the Western Hemisphere. Judge Taney told Dred Scott in the 1850s, this Constitution y'all talking about is not for the Negro. It never was. Amendments, not the 13th, 14th, and the 15th Amendment to the Constitution, shows you that we were not intended to be part of that civilization over here in the West. So just as much as Dred Scott was told in the 1850s, you have no rights as, quote, a black man in the West, labeled as a color. African American as a term became popular when I was 8 years old, and I'm 45 now. That was the aspects of a sad plight that's generally overlooked. Where is our flag? Why are we landless? Who speaks up, say, for us? Why is it that George Bush Jr. had to have black people being able to legally vote again? So these are things that, in pointing things out that we care to say, bring out for reference purposes. What was Martin Luther King talking about when he spoke about, I will see you over in the promised land? What land was he talking about? In his later speeches, talking about the tribe of the Levites. He knew this kind of matter, brothers and sisters. When you read Alex Haley's book, Roots, there's a part in there in chapter 77 of that book that speaks about us being the children of Israel. And even, yes, that book. There is a video on my particular platform, Moreh Yeshiah History Lessons, where a man in the land of Israel, where they are referred to as African Palestinians, where he said that the Greeks and Romans came in and the Israelites went to Africa and then was taken to the United States. This is not an uncommon knowledge. It became much more popular with the internet and so on. And this is what we care to bring out for reference purposes. We want to get our literature out there to the people. So the sad plight that in many cases is overlooked and now seem to be, quote, the norm, destruction of the family, history being boring, presented as such. How does that help me? Where do I fit in that? Just want to point that out.
And thank you for pointing it out. The next question, since we talking about this sad plight, and we all know that most of the people, when they come into this way of life, we identify ourselves as being the children of Israel by this chapter, Deuteronomy chapter 28. And with that said, your book offers a detailed analysis of Deuteronomy chapter 28 from a Hebrew and historical matter. What unique insights or interpretations do you present regarding Deuteronomy chapter 28 that might challenge conventional understandings?
Okay, thank you for that question. Um, Christian apologists, for the lack of a better term, and it's not to knock people who are listening to this who may be Christian. Um, they cite a Roman historian named Munter that said that the Israelites was taken by ship into the land of Egypt and had shipwreck. The Christian theologian stance is that in 70 AD, the children of Israel was no more, obliterated out of history by Rome, which was not the case because Roman historians don't even say upon that, be it Tacitus or others. Now, the historian and geographer Strabo spoke about the Israelites or the Hebrews in a time when Rome was in power, say 600 or so years after the timing of the prophet Zephaniah, being in the Catabasmos, which is in Libya of today, to the borders of Ethiopia. According to the prophet, a French historian, about the scattering of the tribes of Israel and in search of the Lord's tribes of Israel, he cited a historian that said that the tribes of Dan and Gad could be found in Eastern Africa. Eldad the Danite, in the 9th and 10th century AD, spoke about the tribes of Israel, such as Issachar and Simeon, Zebulun, Gad, and Dan, migrating to parts in today called Central Africa. It would make sense that if the Israelites was barred from going into the land of Israel and fighting for entry while in Northern Africa, but were not allowed entry in it, that they will go further into the continent as time progressed on. In the book From Assyria to America, we go into Deuteronomy 28 from a Hebrew perspective. The mistranslation that you see in Deuteronomy 28, verse 25. Shall you be a horror to the kingdoms of the earth, or removed to the kingdoms of the earth? The word za'awah in Hebrew does not mean removed. You shall be a horror to all the kingdoms of the earth. Who are or what are the kingdoms of the earth? We already went over some of them: Assyria, Babylon, Media, Persia, Greece, Rome, and so on in America. So if, according to Israelite prophecy, the people of the Israelite people, due to the deeds of the house of Israel, were to sadly become a horror to the kingdoms of the earth, we could see why they didn't want you in their restaurant. We could see why they don't want black colleges and don't want their children, in many cases, to even attend, quote, historic black colleges and universities. We could see how they want to change history. The slave trade didn't happen. That's a popular thought. You can see the concept of them wanting to eradicate those kind of matters. First, by calling our book the Old Testament. Then, making history seem boring. Then, saying it doesn't apply. So, in the book From Assyria to America, I try to go over not only the words of our, but the word hitmakar in Hebrew, meaning to devote or sell yourself. In Deuteronomy 28, verse 68, when it says, you shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen. The Hebrew doesn't say that exactly. It says, you shall offer yourselves or sell of yourselves. While ain't kone, and there is no buyer, there is no redeemer, there is no purchaser. So you'll be brought back to Mizraim,
generally translated as Egypt, but we know Mizraim means double distress, in ships, by aniyot. By the way whereof I said unto you, you shall see it no more again. In other words, you were never supposed to go back into captivity, distress, double distress, Mizraim, ever again. And there you shall sell yourselves. In the English, which the Hebrew we're pointing out, makor means you will devote yourselves. Whereas the English Masoretic or the King James Version says you shall be sold unto your enemies. The difference between selling yourself and being sold. Wa'ain kone, there's nobody redeeming you. Quana also means redeem when you go to Nehemiah. Nobody's feeling us. Want to be you, but don't want to be you. And so these are things that we care to bring out for reference purposes.
And thank you. Moving on to the next question. You continue that the true Hebrews in part were scattered to African places. What was the most compelling piece of evidence or argument from these sources that solidified your conviction on this?
The scriptures first and foremost. Isaiah chapter 30. And Isaiah lived during the timing of the 7th century BCE. Say 700 something BCE, which is, the 8th century BCE, my fault. In Isaiah 30, it says they go down into Egypt. Geographically, you know, in order to get to Egypt from the land of Israel, you got to go south. That is the most compelling in Isaiah chapter 30. Jeremiah chapter 44, to let the book speak. It speaks about Israelites already being in Egypt. There's over 50 years between Isaiah and Jeremiah. So when you go to Isaiah 30, and now you go to Jeremiah chapter 44, one place saying about Israel going down into Egypt, and the other place some decades later saying Israelites were already in Egypt. Yeah, that's the main source in that particular case. Then there's the external sources to the scriptures that speak about Israelites being in African places. But those two, citing the book itself, the Tanakh, the scriptures, if you will, itself, shows that. Rudolph Windsor in his book Rudolph Windsor in his book, Valley of the Dry Bones, speaks about Egypt being mentioned over 600 times, Ethiopia over 30 times, Canaan over 200 times, the Israelites over 2,000 times, mainly in the said Old Testament. If a book mentions people, for the lack of a better term, if we look at a broad continent matter of such, it cannot be a European-based book. When the majority of the peoples spoken upon in it are, for the lack of a better term, African or African-orientated. What do I mean by that? You mention or see Necho Wahamre in the book of Kings, chapter 23, the assassinator of King Josiah of Judah. We see Tahaka, an Ethiopian ruler in Egypt, mentioned in 2 Kings chapter 19. This is not by chance. We are not going to ignore those kind of matters. You see Hafra, Apries, in Dynasty 26, mentioned in Jeremiah. We're not going to ignore those kind of matters, brothers and sisters. We see, brothers and sisters, Shinar, also called Suma, in Genesis chapter 10. We see it, for those who are interested, in Isaiah chapter 11, where it speaks about the diaspora of Israel, very extensive. In Isaiah chapter 11. All the places mentioned there are in the continent of what we call today Africa and Asia. Israelites, in most cases, did not go to European places on their own volition, in great numbers. So I don't want to convey that, oh, Israel never went to European places. When Solomon had them going over to Tarshish, which is in Spain, when Jonah was okay going to Tarshish, which is in Spain. So yeah, you had Israelite merchants and travelers. But we're talking bulk of the people of Israel in the diaspora went to places in today called the African continent, if we will. So Isaiah 30, decades later, Jeremiah 44 speak about Israelites going to and being in Egypt. Those are some of the primary or hardcore or meaningful purposes, if no other references about the diaspora of Israel.
Okay. Beyond simply presenting historical and biblical facts, what overarching message or call to action do you hope readers would take away from understanding the full scope of the Israelite diaspora?
Good question. I'm taking it as it's being asked, what is the meaning of the book that I would like people to grasp onto? And I'm going to read the back of it to show such. This book is intended to set the suppressed truth to the forefront. The history untold to the masses identifies the fact that the true Israelites went into a spiritual sleep while the world made sure their descendants did not wake up. The author, myself, contends that the Israelites are found in archaeology and in the writings of other nations. The author contends that the history of the Israelites did not end in 70 AD or 70 CE, but that the Israelites migrated, in this case, to the western coast of Africa and were later shipped to the Western Hemisphere and enslaved. The author also uses lingual, historical, both biblical and non-biblical, to arrive to the thesis that the said, quote, African Americans / West Indians are part of the scattered tribes of Israel. That is in this book here, Deuteronomy 28. And this one here at the back, From Assyria to America. This book is to help set the suppressed truth back in the earth. The Bible in Psalms 85 says the truth will come from the earth. In this book, the author, myself, shows from external sources the evidence of the Israelite enslavement in Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, and eventually in the Americas. The author contends that the Hebrew portion, as we pointed out a little while ago, in Deuteronomy 28 must be thoroughly examined to understand the Atlantic slave trade is in prophecy. So, what do I hope people gain out of this? That we have a land in the land of the East. The land that you see going on in contention between Israel and Iran, part of that is the land of Israel is ours. This is not to bash the people that went into the land in the 1940s, but they were able to do so because the true Israelites were not there in great numbers to hold it down, as the saying goes. Same as was done in Egypt. When you find Europeans saying that they were Ramses, amazing. Same as was done in South Africa with the Afrikaans. The colonization, the gentrification is not new. So we have a land, and by default, we have a culture. And by default, you must have a language. So that is what, in a nutshell, what one was hoping that people would gather from reading that book.
Your work challenges conventional understanding of history for many. What kind of impact have you seen your books have on readers, and how do they respond to your findings?
Giving honor and praise unto the Most High, the creator, the maker of heaven and earth. I wanted to write a book for some time. This book we're speaking of, From Assyria to America, was published in 2020 from references that I was studying from, say, 2017, 2018. I want to give sidebar shout out respect to the people when my internet was down at home. The staff in the FedEx store over on 40th Street in Manhattan allowed me to use their Wi-Fi, because when I was living in the Bronx, the Wi-Fi was acting up. All right. Now, I didn't use the library per se to do that kind of references because they wouldn't allow you to really eat and drink like the FedEx store would. So I would have books when my Wi-Fi was not the best. As you can see, the Wi-Fi is better now. Thankful to the creator for that. But I just want to give, on a human level, a shout out to the extended family, we may say, that helped me along with that. Now, you mentioned Adon Yehoshaphat in the comments in the Jerusalem Chronicle. The Jerusalem Chronicle, 35 years, according to what you was putting there. I remember when I was 10 and 11 years old. The New York representative for that was a man, may he rest in peace, named Adon Derision, for those who do know. I saw the Jerusalem Chronicle and have some of the copies of it, and realized that we as Israel need to get literature out. How does that correspond to this question? As I was influenced by the book that Rudolph Windsor wrote, as I was encouraged by the book that Kohen Mikael wrote, one being From Babylon into Timbuktu, the other being Israelites and Jews, The Significant Difference. By the way, I cited Strabo earlier. I got that reference by reading Kohen Mikael's book, Israelites and Jews, The Significant Difference. Now, the Jerusalem Chronicle newspaper advertised. I remember having those articles from the 1990s. A lot of things going on in the Israelite community. Now, how does that tie into this question here? Taking the influence of Moreh Yeshiah and wanting, may he rest in peace, to get into the language and teach it. Taking the literature that Adon Derision, may he rest in peace, the Jerusalem Chronicle representative in New York, and what he was about, and a friend of the family, and wanted to get this kind of information out to the people. Being called in Hashaba Yisrael over 30 years ago to go over the book of Joshua as a child at the age of 13. Shout out to Kohen Mikael for that respect. Shout out and respect to the reader of the congregation Hashaba Yisrael in Charlotte, Adon Yatniel, who actually encouraged me to do public speaking. Shout out and respect to my brother, Akwedmiel Menashe. I'll take the liberty to say it. To not be nervous. Stare at something. That's why you don't see me looking all over the place. I'm focused on the microphone. To be able to speak clearer, more concise, being focused. Those are the kind of lessons I got in that particular case. When the book came out, most people responded by saying similar things, not even knowing each other. And that was, the book is informative, the book is informative, the book is informative. And so I accept that. Glory to the creator of heaven and earth. I look ever so often on YouTube, Moreh Yeshiah exposed, Moreh Yeshiah book debunked. I look up those things to see if anybody challenged what a brother presented. And it's not that I know everything, but so far there wasn't, quote, no takers in that particular case. So family, what do I want to convey? Sidebar, get your traveling on. Traveling does broaden your mind. Years ago, I was in Egypt, and seeing the Meneptah Stela after I spoke upon it definitely was like, wow, okay. So Get your traveling on. Get things done. There's nothing wrong with it. And if I may go there to use the words of the elder Chief Kohat, who is one of the elders in the congregation called DCB, Israel, we are not in captivity as much as we are in exile. Because you can get your passport, you can get your real ID and fly and go somewhere. A captive cannot fly. So we have a little reprieve. It was difficult, say back in the 1960s or into the 1990s, to get a book out. Whereas now it's much more easier with KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing, Book Baby, and other avenues and streams that people, whether you go indie publishing or otherwise, to get a book and literature out. But I will say this, get your citations up. What I did in the Egypt Talk and Writing is I made sure, that being the most controversial book, that before you get to chapter 3, for the lack of a better term, the smash down was done. Egyptians speaking about the Habiru or the Hebrews. The matter of the Brooklyn Papyrus from a woman named Seneptisi during the Middle Kingdom of Egypt. Bring your citations for reference purposes. Show and prove, as the saying goes. And no, we're not prophets. But like it says in Ezekiel, whether they hear or whether they forbear, present the info.
Hallelujah. Beyond historical facts, what spiritual or identity affirming messages do you hope readers glean from understanding their ancient lineage through your work?
Beyond the historical facts, the book of Exodus tells us that if Israel keep the laws, we are to be a kingdom of priests. That means when you go to Genesis 17, for instance, and it talks about kings shall come out of your loins, why would we have a problem saying we're kings? As some actually may have a problem with such, when we are supposed to have and be a kingdom of priests. What does priest mean in Hebrew? Is kohen, from the Hebrew root word kihin, which means to minister. So in so many words, we are the ministers, the representative of the Most High God, the King of Kings. So know that we are royal and royalty. Know that when we say king and prince and queen and princess and things of that kind of nature, that it is not based upon a European understanding. We want to emphasize that because we were never intended to be royal, to be upright and righteous under a European dogma. We were intended to not be as the Most High told Moshe, Moses, and later on Yehoshua or Joshua, Kazakwa Amatz. Be strong and of good courage. No, be humble, be humble, be humble, be humble. Isaiah 51 shows Israel to be so humbled, we lay down and let people walk on top of us. You know how you can drink till you're drunk? We as black people, and later on understanding ourselves as Israel, been so humble and told to be humble, be humble. When some people saying being humble, sidebar, they're telling you don't outshine them. So be careful with that. Knowing good and well that the Most High, though arrogance is not permitted, be humble with your God, is what Micah says. See, we want to not take up the time, but we're going to emphasize this particular point outside of the writings of Tiglath-Pileser, outside the writings of Sennacherib, outside the writings of the Persians and the Moreh Yeshiah, outside the writings of the Zenan Papyrus. The Zenan Papyrus, sidebar, talking about the people of Judah in Egypt having dark skin, big nose, and afro. That's cited in the book. Yeah. The Greeks described the tribe of Judah in Egypt in the Zenan Papyrus as dark skin, big nose, and afro. But let's get back to the question, if we will. Right? Exodus, our book, chapter 19, tells us that we are to be a kingdom of priests. Hosea 4:6 generally cited, my people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge, because you have rejected knowledge. We have the power to gain knowledge. Denmark Vesey in the 1800s. Let's rebel against slavery. Oh, we're just slaves. Denmark Vesey told the people in South Carolina, and you deserve to be a slave because you just said you are. Reading Message with my karma. Well, then you deserve then to be illiterate and ignorant. Seize the time as the Black Panthers were going around saying it. Don't sit there and be feeling you're forcing me to do something. The chips fall where they will. Be strong and of good courage, and letting the chips fall where they will is two different things. How can we reach for the stars, and we were called the stars of heaven in the book of in the book of the Daniel, the prophet? The stars of heaven is talking about the house of Israel. How can we reach for the stars? How can we walk around with names like Lion, Lion of the Most High, Ariel? How can we walk around with names like Eldad the Danite, meaning beloved of God? That's what Eldad means. And then we're telling each other all the time, just remain humble, but you're not telling them what the Most High also said, be strong and of good courage. How, again, can you reach for the stars, telling people you got to pull yourself up by your bootstraps? How does that coincide with loving your neighbor as yourself? That extra humility, we need to cut that and mix it in with being strong. Kazakh. You don't find Israelites naming themselves Kalash, meaning weak. Kala, meaning sick. You find Israelites naming themselves Dawid after Dawid the king, or David the king. Shlomo after Shlomo the king. I ain't never meet an Israelite naming themselves Datan, because you see the record that Datan or Dathan left. I met Israelites that were named Moshe, one by birth and the other by naming oneself. As it says in Isaiah, one will subscribe with his hand and rename himself Yisrael in Isaiah chapter 44. That is something we care to bring out. That is something we care to sit there and show the people, that our position in this earth is not the tail that Deuteronomy 28 says after verse 15, but the head, the kingdom of priests. That's to say, Mamleket Kohanim. Hosea 4:6 says, you rejected knowledge. You shall be no priest, seeing you've forgotten the law of your Elohim, the law of your God. Read Hosea 4:6, and then go and see what Israel's position was supposed to be when you go in Exodus chapter 19 by obeying the Most High God. The humility song, and I'm going to say this, and I hope I don't get banned, that Israelites have been singing to each other simply means don't outshine me. I can't stand your shine, so therefore I'm jealous and hating, so I'm going to tell you, you should hate on yourself. Humble yourself. Why should you write this? Why should you go in there and do that? What is the point in that? Because you're not going to, in due respect, and I say in no disrespect, when my mother came into the understanding of Israel, into the congregation called Kosher Erit in 1982, it was standing room only. To my understanding, they had to get up one of the members in order for her to get a seat. And then eventually she went there in October of 82. They had a Hanukkah situation and acknowledgement in December of 82. And that is when my sister made the Most High continue her life, and my son was brought out there. So me and my sister brought to the camp, wasn't on Shabbat, Yom Kippur, Pesach, or Passover, nothing like that. Let me not say it as nothing like that, but it wasn't for a holy day, it was for a party in which my mother, being comfortable in the congregation, brought me and my sister to such. May she rest in peace and not being self-centered. My mother said she came into this way of life so that way I can learn it. One of the things to want to leave as a legacy is to sit there and get the type of information out there to the people. I joined with some other Israelites as time went on before the book came out and called myself a rapper. Didn't work. The rhymes didn't go with the beat. The flow didn't marinate with the other rappers on the song. So they told me shalom. And I was part of a rap group that just didn't manifest. But giving honor to the Most High, a brother has taught Hebrew in New York. A brother has taught Hebrew in South Carolina. A brother has taught Hebrew on his own platform. So know where you fit in at and give glory to the Most High. And as it says in Isaiah, not the, and I hate to have to say it, the camp song of be humble, the prophets, not the camps. The prophet said, arise and shine, for your light has come upon you. Why? Israel don't teach that. Is beyond me.
Okay, let's talk about you. Let's change the focus toward you, considering the extensive research and deeply personal nature of this project. How has writing from Assyria to America impacted your own understanding of history, faith, and identity?
It was amazing how much information was out there. There's a book edited by James Pritchard called The Ancient Near East in Text and Pictures, where he cites the different Assyrian kings, mention the Israelites. So now taking this question and giving an answer, say such. From Assyria to America impacted on my own understanding of history. I believe the book that you see in the background, that I don't know if I'll be able to top that book, though I intend to write more books. Let me read the table of contents, and you can see the book here in that case, right? Let me read the table of contents of this. From Egypt to America, from Avaris, which was in Egypt, to Alabama, the Romans and the Israelites, how to teach Deuteronomy 28, chapter 5, from Ghana to Georgia, chapter 6, from Dahomey to Delaware, chapter 7, from Nigeria to Niagara, chapter 8, from Madagascar to Manhattan. And how, brothers and sisters, it allowed me to be more comfortable in research. It allowed me, just like the book Hebrew is Easy, it allowed me to know and understand about getting things out there to the people is not as difficult. It allowed me to be focused. I had to put energy, time, references, money in order to get this out there to the people. I pay online to be able to have a thing called StreamYard. So now the money that I get from working is focused in a particular matter. It made me more accountable to and responsible for me wanting to get things out there to the people. It gave me a mission and a purpose. It gave me a reason, brothers and sisters, loving history, to get this out there and guided by the Most High. As I pointed out a little while ago, I was part of a rap group that did not come to its fruition with me rhyming or rapping with them. But the people I was rhyming or rapping with bought the books. So you have to know where you fit in that particular case. On a human level, I give due respect to my mother who taught me how to read. I didn't really learn to read in school, no offense. My vocabulary built reading the prayers in Kol She'erit when I'm 4, 5, 6 years old. The breath of every living being shall bless thy name continually. So the reading skill came from the congregation and from home. May she rest in peace. There was a babysitter when I used to live, for those who do know, in a place in Brooklyn called Flatbush, in a place at that time called Vanderveer. Her name was Moreh Yeshiah, and she used to buy me those old composition books and sit there and have me do the penmanship, teaching me how to write in script and things of that kind of nature. Reading and writing was a crime for a reason in slavery. I mentioned, not to be self-centered, when I was a thief as a child, I did not want mommy to read the receipt. because I knew I took part of the change. So just as much as I wanted to hide the receipt when I'm 8, 9 years old, so do people want to hide things and hope you don't do enough research and due diligence. And surprised when you find out, like, huh? Where's the receipt, son? This cost this. The change says this. You're on punishment after Shabbat. So say from that Wednesday, no TV, no going out to play, go to school, come on back, do your homework. But one thing she never, regardless of what I did as a child that was not bright, she always encouraged reading. Shout out to my aunt. I'm not going to mention her name because just due respect, who worked in a children's bookstore and gave my mother books for me to deal with the reading. It helped as time went on with jobs, applications. It helped not to be too much out there in my business and having to deal with a court case or two. Read things thoroughly. Get your information together for reference purposes. I mean, again, not to get too personal. I had to deal with a court matter, so I had to take off from work earlier in order to sit there and deal with a said matter. Now, if a person is not thorough in reading and checking things out, what could have happened? So now, if I'm being asked, how did all of this tie in to help me? Those are the answers with that matter.
Okay. And when working on this book, what was the most challenging aspect of researching and writing such a comprehensive historical work?
It was fun to get into the information, even though all the information is not the happiest. So the challenging aspect was, now please people don't be offended or discouraged in what I'm saying, the publishers. What they wanted as a percentage, what they was asking for the pricing. That was the most difficult aspect. Was dealing with the KDP or the Lulu company or any of these other publishers in that particular case. That was, to answer your question, the most difficult in that particular case. It was easy to sit there and get the information put into I want to say and show, if I may, flash drive. Have your literature on your flash drive, your external hard drive, and in your computer, because you don't want to lose your documents and so on. Have it in your computer, have it on a flash drive and an external hard drive. That's my suggestion. And name it what you want. And brothers and sisters, what was the most challenging aspect of researching and writing? I don't mean to be disrespectful, but it really wasn't a challenge because it was a passion. It was something that I wanted to do. So I didn't see it as a challenge outside of the publishers and my left hand. What do I mean by my left hand? Typing and typing and typing and typing and not having that plastic cover on the keyboard. My ring finger began to hurt on the tip ever so often. So that was the other aspect. I would keep on typing until my hand or my finger began to hurt. Then I'll know to stop. Save it on the external hard drive, transfer it over to the flash drive, and then the work come out. Glory to the Most High. Oh, let me say this, if I must give a direct answer regarding the book itself. For me, what to name the chapters? The book was already completed before the table of contents was put together. I changed the table of contents in that particular case. So for me, the table of contents was one of the most difficult things in that particular case.
You sound like me when I do my my research. I had to think about, okay, then I did the research. What am I name this lesson? But with that said, you answered some of this questions with the last question. But anyway, I'm going to ask it. For aspiring authors in our community who are passionate about uncovering historical truths, what advice would you offer them?
When Solomon became king, the Most High said to him, because you did not ask for the life of your enemies, was something that was favored towards Solomon. Haters exist. Haters have some of the same DNA and some of the same grandparents that you have. Haters are some of your coworkers. Haters, sadly, can be a spouse, believe it or not, which is not good. You got parents who hate on their children's growth, trying to smother them. My mother, may she rest in peace, was not big on history. I remember asking, and I'll say this online in due respect, being her son, to take the liberty in such. I remember asking Mommy, what happened during the time when Malcolm X was assassinated on a Sunday? Her response was, I had to go to school the next day. I said, okay. I said, Mommy, what was going on and what happened when Martin Luther King was assassinated on a Sunday? Her response was, I had to go to work the next day. I realized, and no disrespect to my mother, that she did not know how to answer politically, socially, but only personally what was going on, the timing of Malcolm X's assassination and Martin Luther King's assassination. And she was alive during both of those times. In school one time at high school and working during the other time. But she did say that when Martin Luther King was assassinated, being in New York, that the smoke from the fires and the riots in Harlem was seen coming over Brooklyn. For those who do know the geography of New York, that's pretty far. She did mention that. When Mommy saw me going and loving history, she bought me a thing called Golden Legacy magazines. That's when I learned about To Sutler Overture. That's when I learned about Robert Smalls. That's when I learned about the Black Cowboys, like Bill Pickett, if you will. That's when I learned about the Latimer brothers, Granville T. Woods. That's when I learned about Frederick Douglass. So even though historical figures to me born in 1980, such as Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, Mommy didn't know what to say historically or politically concerning that. She saw the path that her son was going in and she encouraged it. I got a little princess. She's into animals. I'm not into studying about cats and how many animals got more than one stomach. That's not my passion. That's hers. So it is a duty of a parent to not smother the child, to sit there and see where the child's going, not in wickedness, and encourage it. And that's what she did for me. So my main influence came, may she rest in peace, from my mother in that particular case. So what will I say to aspiring authors? Get around people who encourage you. Get around people who want to see you shine. Get around people who show you love. Get around people who may not even care, just say about history, but know that their friend does. I remember having a neighbor when I lived in Queens, and I gave her some literature. And I said, well, what do you think about it? She was like, that ain't me. I gave it to my sister. I was like, okay. My sister's more into that. And I ain't even that. She was just 100 and blunt like that. But you never know who can be benefited from such. So those are things to point out for reference purposes. I have in my family 2 biological younger sisters. One, and I don't mean the Shane family, who doesn't care to buy it, and one who helped me edit it. Why do I go as far as saying that? Be with those in your passion who share the same goal and vision. And remember, it's give and take. So also be an influence and a support to those who support you. The Jerusalem Chronicle supported the book that I wrote. So if they're asking me, not to get too personal, to promote their magazine, or pardon me, their newspaper, yes, no problem. I converse with those elders out of Mississippi, out of Tennessee, not to get geography and get into people's business, if you will. You understand? So in give and take, be there, be supportive, be teachable, be able to say, let me take advice. But do know that sometimes immediate family is not going to be that supportive. It happens. Do know that you're going to sit there, and as you get things out there, be it music, books, a cooking business, selling plates or whatever, you're going to have haters. And you can tell who they are when they mention you stole from your mother as a child. Then therefore I know that's a hater. You wasn't married when you had a baby. Therefore I know that you's a hater. You don't see someone progress and grow and change. Ezekiel chapter 18 speaks upon if a person does X, Y, and Z that is incorrect and changes from it, his or her former iniquities are not remembered. So why do we bring up dirt from the past about each other when a person is trying to do the better? That's a hater. Separate from your enemies and take heed to your friends is what the Apocrypha teaches us.
All right now. Yes, that's a hater. It's dead weight too. And the people that are closest to you are your worst enemies. And with that said, we have some more final questions to ask you. We're going to wrap up Assyria. The topic of from Assyria to America. The 12 tribes are in derision is the topic. So do you have plans for a part 3 or other related works that expand on these themes? What's next for your research and writing?
Thank you.
Inquiring minds want to know.
Okay, shalom. Thank you for asking that. Giving honor to the Most High. It is my duty, taking references from college sources, magazines, documents, to present more information. There is, and I do have the prelude to the table of contents of the book From Assyria to America, Part 3, and the cover's already made. There is another work that I want to bring out called 1619 Slavery, the Cherished Date. So those are 2 historical books that I intend to come out with, and 2 Hebrew books called Hebrews Easy Volume 7 and Hebrews Easy Volume 8. So as this quote unquote year go on, there are 4 different things that I care to bring out. One called Hebrews Easy Volume 7, Hebrews Easy Volume 8, a book called 1619 Slavery, the Cherished Date, and yes, From Assyria to America, Part 3. So I do appreciate, again, giving on a human level respect to you, Morah Bahtshevah, who reached out and was okay with me presenting my literature and my contact info on your platform in order to sit there and get that out to the people. And after that, that would be, I believe, the conclusion of me writing books.
Okay, the conclusion. Is the end of the year or just the conclusion of you writing books all together? And also, what other books do you have listed on Amazon or other online platforms?
The major The major platform that I use to get my books out there is through Amazon. If you get at me or contact me at 908-587-4841, you can, by reaching out to me, in that case, get the books yourself. In that particular case, some people are not comfortable with their address to anybody. I respect that. But if you want the book, the best way, if not directly from me, is through Amazon.com. All right. So the books we have is From Assyria to America, Part 1, Part 2, Deuteronomy 28, History Untold to the Masses, also Egypt Talk and Writing, and another book called Israelite History as it Relates to the World. So those are the books out in that particular case. There is also, and that's pen named Vincent Hutchinson. So let's say if you go on Amazon and type in Vincent Hutchinson, the books that I wrote comes up. For those who have bought, I appreciate the support. For those who have bought and read, I appreciate the support and the inquiry. And there's also under the author name Yeshiah Yisrael, Hebrews Easy Volume 1 all the way to Volume 6 in that particular case. For those who support it, definitely is encouraged. I do offer private Hebrew classes. You can get at me by that way at my number 908-587-4841. There is a Moreh named Moreh Uriel Malkiah, Moreh Malkiah Uriel. And I was introduced to his platform. He too is an author. And authors respect authors. You understand? So on my particular platform, Moreh Yeshiah Hebrew Lessons and Moreh Yeshiah Torah Lessons, if you look in the chat, you see me speak highly of this particular elder. Well, when I say elder, I mean a person older than, say, myself. All right? So there are brothers, elders, sisters, older women, such as Ella Hewley, made the Most High continue to bless her life, who wrote books and so forth and so on. So just want to point that out in that particular case. All right.
Okay. Do you have any other social media handles you want to put out there?
Well, again, thank you for that. The main way to reach me is my number, as you see, 908-587-4841. My Facebook is Yeshiah Author Danite, if I may say. Let me see if I can do this. I don't know. If I can show something in a PowerPoint, let me know. Because I did make a little list in that particular case. If this could be seen. Not sure. I'm trying to do it in this manner. I don't know if I had to share it with you first. Sorry. In that particular case, okay, it's not able to be seen from what I'm able to see. But yeah, 908-587-4841 and Yeshiah and author. That's my Instagram. All right. So my Facebook is Yeshiah Author Danite, and Instagram is Yeshiah and author, and that information will come up. In that particular case, let me write this or put this in the chat if I may. Thank you again for promoting Yeshiah Author Danite. That's on Facebook. All right. Then Yeshiah and author. That's Instagram. All right. That's the platforms to reach me on. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. Well, do you have any parting words? Because our segment has come to an end. So what would you like to leave? What kind of information would you like to leave to the audience before we end this segment?
First and foremost, giving honor to the Most High, the one who sees all and is not seen, the one who judges all and is not judged. Commit your works to Yah, and your thoughts will be established. This is not to say that if you commit your thoughts to Yah, that your works won't be established. But in Leviticus, it tells us when you come to appear before the Most High, what offering, what korban are you to bring? The word korban means offering in Hebrew. Comes from the root word korab, which means to what? Appear or to approach. On a human level, Saul was saying, when they were to go and meet the prophet Samuel, what gift would you bring? You don't show up, it's just me. No, come with something. Whatever that thing is that you have to offer. The princes in Israel, in numbers, they all brought the same offering. You understand? But brothers and sisters, imparting and giving honor to the Most High. Commit your works to Yah. Commit your works to the Most High, and your thoughts will be established. Get your business cards. Get online. Promote your literature. Promote your platform. There's a brother I grew up around in Israel named Shemaiah. May the Most High bless his life. His father, Moreh Yeshiah, may he rest in peace, was one of my Hebrew teachers. I promote his music on my platform. So that is some of the things I'm pointing out and wanting to say in that particular case. You can go online and type this on YouTube. Black Fringes. All positive music. The beats are nice and so forth and so on. That is an album that my friend asked me to promote. And it doesn't take nothing away from me to do that. So be teachable, be promoting, and you will begin to sit there and see. As we want to keep on pointing out, commit your works to Yah. Put something out there. Like Solomon when he built the temple. Put something out there, and as the saying goes, if you build it, the people will come. Shalom.
Torah Rabbah, Torah Rabbah. All right, you guys. That is the end of this segment. As we wrap up this insightful conversation with Moreh Yeshiah, I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to our guest for sharing his books, experiences, and wisdom with us tonight. Your dedication and passion to enlighten us about our history truly shines through. And I know your insights will be incredibly valuable to those watching. Again, you can reach him at 908. Let me put it on the screen. 908 587 4841. His email address is yisrael22@yahoo.com. His Facebook is Yeshiah Author Danite. And Yeshiah and Author, I think he says it Instagram, if I'm not mistaken. But again, thank you, Moreh Yeshiah. You are truly blessed, and we are truly blessed to be here. And you are truly blessed with your knowledge of history.
Thank you for that. I hope I'm not taking up too much time. People need, this may sound weird, people need to hear uplifting and positive things. Joseph, after all the stuff his brothers did to him, it said that he spoke comfortably to them. We want to, in our families, end the generational curses. So Joseph's son Manasseh, don't take what Judah did to me, Joseph, speaking in general, out on your cousin. We have to end that kind of matter. the Most High, through the prophet Malachi, it says, he will turn the hearts of the fathers to the children and the hearts of the children to the fathers, lest he come and smite with a curse. The unity of the family is very important. And don't be discouraged. Like when my little sister sat there and said, I ain't in history. And my little princess, the only child I have, history is, that's not your passion, and it's okay. You can't beat people in the head. Put it out there. And for those who it's for, it will be. But at the same token, be teachable, encourageable, and be an ear to one another. With that, shalom.
Toda Rabah, shalom. All right, you guys, that is the end of this segment. And I have an announcement to make. Jehoshaphat has an upcoming appreciation dinner. The Jerusalem Chronicle newspaper's 35th year of serving as a voice for the community invites you to their JCN appreciation dinner Sunday, Yom Echad, or Yom Rishon, as some people say, on June 29th at 1 o'clock p.m. to 8 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time. For more information, call Jehoshaphat Yisrael at 901-480-3475. A breakdown of what is happening is at 1 o'clock p.m. to 3 o'clock p.m., you have the journalist journey display. 3 o'clock p.m. to 4 o'clock p.m., meet and greet, photos and contests. And from 5 o'clock p.m. to 8 o'clock p.m., you had a dinner and the banquet. So again, for more information, call Jehoshaphat Yisrael at 901-480-3475. Again, it is on June 29th, this upcoming Yom Rishon, Yom Echad, or Sunday, as some people commonly call it. Until next week, Yisrael, when I start my Torah and history lesson, and I will be uploading my workbook by the middle of the week, hopefully by the second day of the week. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to either email me at 12tribesstrong@gmail.com or put it in the comment section down below the video. Be blessed, Israel. Be blessed. Well, Miss Parker, our time has come to an end for this segment. It is always such a privilege and a pleasure to share this virtual space with you, to witness the connections made, the support offered, and the beautiful spirit of our community shining so brightly as we carry the insights and the inspiration shared tonight into the next week. Let us remember the power we hold individually and collectively to uplift and encourage one another. Just as a single act of kindness can ripple outwards, so too can our support for the Hebrew author we just heard, Moreh Yeshiah. It can create a meaningful impact within our community. It's called history. Identifying who we are. If anything you heard resonated with you, if a particular book that Moreh Yeshiah has written sparked your interest or stirred your spirit, I encourage you to reach out to him, connect with him and other authors I mentioned in the past. Explore their books. Consider how you might lend your support, whether it's purchasing a book, sharing a link with a friend, a family member, or simply offering a word of encouragement. Your engagement truly makes a difference. And to all of you watching, if you found this segment helpful, please give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment with your own favorite Hebrew author or authors, or questions if you have any, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes of Go Live with Morah Bahtshevah, where we delve into more topics that matter. I eagerly await our next gathering next Thursday night at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, where we will once again open our hearts and our virtual doors to more inspiring stories and opportunities to connect. Please spread the word, invite your friends and family to join us, and let us continue to build this beautiful community together, one heartfelt connection at a time. May the peace and blessings of Yah Elohim rest upon you and your loved ones. May your homes be filled with joy, our tables with abundance, and your hearts with the comforting presence of the Most High Yah. Until we meet again, may you walk in peace. May you be surrounded by love, and may the light of the Torah illuminate your path. Lahitra Oak and the early Shabbat Shalom. I'm out of here, Yisrael. Peace.